in my worldview, and we'll go into why later,
Yeah,
but in
yeah.
my view, that the problem is that employees aren't empowered to drive their own careers. Leaders don't have the abilities to have the right conversations with the right people at the right time. And businesses don't really understand what's going on with their people in terms of their career progression, development, and performance.
Mm,
They don't understand what good looks like.
mm-hmm,
And I would say that's the problem that we're trying to solve, I
mm,
think. As I've told you, and I think I said beforehand, we're working on our positioning at the moment. It comes back to the fact that only 21% of employees globally are engaged at work, and only
wow.
33% are thriving in their overall well-being. And actually, only 9% of UK workers are enthused by getting up and going to work. And yet we know that organisations that have engaged people have around a 20% higher profit margin than those with workers and people that don't feel engaged. So the stats are out there. And then, I've done a lot of research and work over the years, and nearly 30% of organisations, and again, this isn't my research, but 30% of organisations or around there say the current way to tackle the labour crisis and the engagement being low is to improve company culture. And I suppose, it's quite a big premise to say our technology will improve your culture. That's a big thing to say. And I think over the years I've seen so many tech companies say that their technology is, employee engagement software. And, I've said this before. And actually, the only people that can improve a culture is the people within that organization. I'm not arrogant enough to think that our software can do that. But what it can do is definitely support company culture. Before I started working on any of this stuff, we did some research, and this is like 20 odd years old, off the back of the McKinsey War for Talent, where we surveyed over 2,000 people in the hospitality industry as they were coming through a recruitment consultancy, and found that actually people are the drivers, there are 5 drivers as to why people leave organizations. And, if you get these 5 things right, then money is proved to come much lower down on the list, say number 9. And those 5 things are if you communicate with people in an adult to adult way. So not parent-child, not top-down, very much, and what the millennials downwards in terms of generations in the workforce, what they want. So consultative, two-way communication. So communication, leadership. If your leaders are inspirational, people work for people, not organisations. We all know that. We hear it thrown around the whole time. So if you can get your leaders to be inspiring to their teams, then they're much more likely to stay. If people have development that's individualised to them. So one thing that people tend to think, and organisations actually, is that sending people off to do a management development programme and putting them on a course for time management, and putting everybody through that will make a massive difference. And actually what makes the difference is people have development that's individualised, but also continuous and on the job. So you have to talk to each person and understand where their gaps are and what they've got
Mm,
to do. So 3 is individualised development. 4 is showing people a clear career path, that's right for them. And what we tend to do, and especially in hospitality, it's so easy to come into the kitchen and then think, okay, now I'm going to work my way up to head chef. But actually, someone might come into the kitchen for one reason, but actually, I don't know, be a photographer. And then, you have that conversation, oh, you do photography. Can you take some pictures of our food? And suddenly, they're in marketing. But if you're not having those conversations, then how do you know? So the 4th thing is very clear development. Very clear sort of conversations around that person's development, what they want to do. And the other thing to say on that point, actually, is that a lot of the time we think that we know what people want to do, and it's about sitting down and asking them and having that conversation about being the right time as well. We'll come on to talk about potential because that's a huge, huge subject. But for me, you can't decide someone's potential without having a conversation with them. And the fifth thing is that people have values that are aligned to that of the organisation. So values-led organisations are also way more profitable. People that understand why they're here. I mean, I'm sure everyone's listened to Simon Sinek and starts with why. It really does. Like, I use that phrase probably every day. I use it in my parenting, in everything, explain why, give people context about why they're here, what they're here to do. And organisations are notoriously bad at that. So if people understand why they're getting up in the morning, why they're going to work, then again, they'll be much more engaged. So if you hit those 5 things, then people will be more engaged. Money becomes number 9. They will stay for longer. When I say money becomes number 9, that's only if you're paying this. If you've got 2 companies paying the same, one's hitting those 5 points, one isn't, they'll stay at the company that's paying the 5 points. You have to pay people fairly. And our software solves those 5 things, doesn't solve them. Sorry, that's a massive statement. It supports the conversation around those 5 things.
Yeah.
So
I guess
the longest sentence in the world.
That was a fantastic sentence. I love that. I'm not going to put any comments or anything in that. That was brilliant. That. So I think I guess what's coming through then is the idea of having a good conversation is kind of central to all of this, right? Because if you're not having these conversations, then you're not going to be able to achieve all of this. But let's state the obvious. Why is it hard to have conversations like this in hospitality?
Because traditional performance and talent management processes don't work. Everybody still thinks, oh, you're doing online appraisals. And I don't know why I said it in that voice. That was really weird. That's something coming out of my head. Hate the word appraisal. It's so backward looking. It's so old school. And there was a massive movement about sort of, we're banning appraisals. I think it was Virgin did it. And that's great. I'm all for that. Definitely ban appraisals, stop beating people up for what they have or haven't done in the past, have future focused conversations. But what you're going to replace it with, we know that companies using sort of some kind of performance management technology, however you do it, outperforms companies that don't by 1.5%. Yet people either don't do it effectively, don't do it at all, or it's a tick box exercise. And I think what we want to do is put a bit of structure in to say, you need to have these conversations, and this is why it is important. It's not a tick box exercise. And why don't people have them on a day-to-day basis? Because they're too busy. We know the problems in hospitality. You've got, you're short-staffed, you're there in the operation. Your head is about, how do we make the customer happy? How do we get people through the doors? How do we get more bums on seats? How do we give the amazing customer experience? And then you've got HR saying, but people experience, we have to give people a good people experience. And there'll be all kinds of stuff going on around the people experience. There'll be loads of companies doing loads of stuff. Yay, come and, here are all our benefits. And this is what you can sign up for this, or maybe we'll pay you a bit more. And here's our reward and recognition scheme. But actually, again, in my world, the most valuable thing you can do is give people time. We run the best places to work in hospitality, survey in conjunction with the Caterer magazine. And that surveyed over 12,000 people. And the top things that come out of that are that people want to work in a positive and welcoming work environment. They want to work for a company that cares about them, and they want respect for their work-life balance. So how do you know that unless you are having these conversations? But what we hear from leaders all the time are, I know my people, I know them, I don't need to have these conversations. Yeah, anecdotally, our clients are telling us when we sit down and have these conversations, we go deeper. We dig in more to the things that we need to talk about. And what our software does is makes the person having the conversation think about it way, way more than they would have done if it was just somebody coming up to them and going, how are you feeling today? By the way, what do you want to do next with your life? It gives leaders a framework to actually sit down and have the conversation. And as a result of it, the analytics we get out of it gives businesses the the numbers, the data, the stats to be able to understand where they need to be putting their efforts. So,
Hmm.
what development do people need? Do we need to set up a mentoring program, or do we need to do more secondments, or how many, actually we've got, 20% of our people are ready to move on, but we don't have the space for them to go. So what are we going to do about it, and how are we going to have that conversation with them? Or our employee net promoter score sits at, +3, and we know that actually +25 is where it should be.
Hmm.
So why don't they do it? They're too busy. So our job is to educate them on why they should be doing it, which isn't what
Yeah.
the actual software does, which is why it's more consultative, our software. So yeah, it's too busy. So it's about, we don't work with people that don't have a culture where they genuinely think that their people should be taking time out to have this kind of conversation.
Mhm.
Which is why I think I've been thinking about it quite a lot. We churn more, like over the years. We started off, I don't think we lost a customer for 8 years, because I think we were the only bit of technology that did what we did, or certainly within sort of our little world. And I think now, where organisations grow, they're always looking to streamline. And one of the easiest things to do is take out a piece of tech that is doing something so specific as this, because you can say, do you know what? It's fine. I did appraisals in my last company. That worked. Oh, look, you can go and fill in a form there, make everyone have a meeting once a year, tick, done. We've done what we're supposed to do. That to me isn't showing you're caring about your people. Sitting down and having conversations that they can choose when they have them. The manager can choose when they have them. The business can choose when they have them. They don't have to have them, but they're given the opportunity to. That just changes it slightly. That's saying this is something that facilitates people being able to sort of say, actually, something's changed for me. I want to tell my company about this. And I know the only way I'm going to get promoted is if I, meet my goals and I'm hitting all the values and the behaviours that the organisation has set out for me. And I have done all my development that I agreed to. That's how you can start getting some transparency, and also having some really honest conversations.
Hmm.
One of the reasons I did this is because nobody had ever had that kind of conversation with me. But imagine a world where you could go to your employer and sit down. This is my little dream world, by the way, where you can go to your employer and sit down and say, do you know what? I think coming here to work for 2 years would be really, really good for me. So I'm going to give you 2 years of my time. And in return, you, employer, are going to give me whatever it is that you're going to give me. And after that, it's all good. No surprises, nothing else. And do you know what? If the business or the person wants to cut that shorter or do that longer, that's fine. But have the conversation. Don't. Why are people scared? It's when people are nervous to hand in their resignations, or a resignation comes as a shock. That's horses bolted. Like exit interviews, great, lovely, and all the rest of it. But why are we having them? If you're having proper, regular career conversations with people, then it won't be a surprise when they leave. It'll be a celebration, because you've got them as far as they want to be in your business, and they've given you everything that they possibly can while they're there. I live in a dream world, I know this. But you've got to have a big dream, haven't you?
That's interesting, because my wife is a teacher, and in teaching it's very, very different, because it's all about promoting an individual's career. And if sort of a teacher wants to move to another school, they get time off to go and do that interview, and the current school is supposed to support them.
Yes.
And it's just a million miles away from the vast majority of businesses, commercial businesses, because, as you say, people will just book a holiday and you've no idea if they're going for an interview or not, generally speaking, because you haven't got that type of relationship. And it is very, very difficult to create that, because it often is much more transactional. But I guess the reason that it is so transactional is because you're just not speaking properly, are you? You're not having a two-way conversation.
Because the culture isn't set up like that, because the
Yeah.
culture is one of, it's a culture where people are afraid. The leadership is sort of top down. You know, you want to be able to have a frank and honest conversation without there being repercussions. And this is, I suppose, what Carrero does, is give that framework. It's, you know, it's putting leaders in a position to have the conversations where it's trust, you know. And I saw an amazing talk a couple of years ago, Dr. Amanda Potter, look her up. Can't remember the name of her business off the top of my head, but she did a talk on psychological safety, and it was eye-opening, the fact that the difference in performance when you're totally trusted and you can make mistakes and you can be honest and you can be open. And I'm probably going to get this example slightly wrong, but it's a really good one, that where there is psychological safety, they did a massive experiment, and it was within hospitals in the USA, and it was with theatre teams. And we're talking about actual life and death here, not like, oh my God, I didn't serve somebody their, you know, meal warm or whatever it might be. You know, so life and death situations, and they looked and monitored theatre teams, and the theatre teams that were the highest performing and had the best sort of rate overall in terms of life, death, success, failure of being in theatre, were the teams that made the most mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were admitting their mistakes, they were talking about their mistakes, they were having conversations about it, they were being really, really open, and therefore they could solve them, get together, move on. Those teams were the strongest teams.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to start sort of working towards psychological safety is to create an environment of openness and trust. And that comes back to my 5 points again. Sit down and show people you care about them, not by knowing, you know, the basics, like, you know, your cat's at the vet's or your daughter's just about to do her GCSEs or whatever it might be that's taking their brain away from what the job is, but to genuinely sit down and say, what do you want to do with your career? How can we help you get there? And what development do you need to be the best you can possibly be? And in this organisation, what good looks like are these 5 behaviours, and here's how we would like you to exhibit them. How do you think you're doing on those? Because, you know, not everybody's perfect, and we can't, for cultural and diversity reasons, we can't employ carbon copies. But if you know that you want your organisation to have a value of, well, one of mine is care. If you want an organisation to be caring, there are behaviours that you want to see in the people that come into that business that exhibit those behaviours. Now, in some organisations, care isn't a value, and so people that don't care so much, it wouldn't matter. But to me, it matters that people are caring and they're credible and they're positive. That's our 3 values. So if I interviewed somebody and I could see through behavioural questioning that actually everything was a bit of a problem and they were quite negative and they couldn't put positive spins on stuff, and I asked them stories, they would never get to work here, because I need people that are positive. I need people that care. But if you don't know what your company values are and you don't understand, you know, what good looks like here, you're setting people up for failure, which is why I have a consultancy business. Because as you can see, if I go in and talk about this stuff and start questioning people and say, so, you know, hey, amazing hospitality business, I'd really like to work with you. And you've called me up and you've said, yeah, I want your software and I'm really excited about this. So tell me, what does good performance look like here? Literally look at me like I'm stupid. I'm like, okay, so how do we not know this? There are so many businesses that if I say to them exactly like you said to me, tell me in a sentence, if I said, tell me what good looks like here, that they won't be able to tell you anything apart from somebody who does the most sales. That's not the be all and everything, you know. Culture eats strategy for business. But anyway, you know, it's about, yeah, it's so much bigger. And so that's why a lot of the time, you know, our software, it is quite a hard sell because it's consultative, because we sit down with people and we say, we can't put our software in your organisation until you know what good looks like. If somebody comes to us and says, right, I know exactly the behaviours I want people to exhibit and how that plays out at different job levels, different job types, I'm very, very clear on it. then we can get you up and running really, really quickly. But often there's a lot more questioning around that. And don't get me wrong, we're on a massive journey. Most people at the moment divide the questions that they're asking people to sort of get all this information and have these conversations. The questions they're asking people are usually based on level of role. But what we can do is break it down almost by, okay, but what does it look like for your graduates? What does it look like for your apprenticeships? What does it look like for people who are working in your kitchens? What does it look like for people that are working in the hotel? And we're doing some interesting stuff now where we're pulling it out with the NED, actually. If you're not familiar with them, there are, I think 700 odd people working there on the site. It's one huge, amazing converted bank with restaurants and hotel, swimming pool on the roof. It's,
Wow.
It's ridiculous. Middle of London. Amazing organisation. Lots of things going on there. And we're working with them at how, what are the different types of journeys that they're going to have. So they have their sort of, what happens when you've been with the organisation for, a week, for 45 days, for 90 days, what kind of conversations do you have on an ongoing basis about performance? But now we're looking at, okay, what are we doing with your high performers? What are we doing with your graduates? And what questions are we asking them? What types of conversations are we having with them? So yeah, it's really interesting when people get it and it works. It's so cool going in and sort of doing all this stuff with people and sort of understanding what it looks like. It does mean that it's not a low cost, high sell piece of software because we're close to all our clients.
Yeah. I mean, which is the way it needs to be, really. What I wanted to get your opinion on was we pointed out time as probably the most obvious reason why businesses struggle to have conversations. But I had an interesting conversation myself with an operator about a week ago, actually, and we were talking about basically what's happened since COVID is because so many people have left the industry, there's been a necessity to promote people into leadership positions too early, and they don't actually have the skills that are required. And I guess that is another reason, isn't it, why people aren't having these conversations, because through no fault of their own, managers don't know how to.
100%. And even the managers that do, I think we worked with a like a big food service organisation, and one of the somebody said to me, oh yeah, I think I can't remember who it was, but there was a director name at the end of it, said, oh, it made me have some conversations I would never normally have. So yeah, it totally is to prompt and to focus those conversations onto the right things. And I think, it's unfortunate that the word and, the whole appraisal and review thing has got so entangled in this kind of conversation, and it's just moving away from it, because people almost seem surprised that you could sit down and have a conversation with someone about their career and it be positive. It's all got that bad. And often this type of software gets lumped in with with sort of a big one-stop shop in terms of, look, you can do it on a spreadsheet. You can do it through Forth. You can do it through Harry. You can do it through Mapao. You can do it. There are a million, there's software companies out there that have some forms that people can go and fill in, and it works quite well. That's fine. What I'm not convinced of is the quality of the conversation, because I'm not sure how well thought through it is. And if you've got, people that have got time to sit down and really think about it, then it will be. Obviously, there are some brilliant HR professionals out there that can do what I do. But what I worry about is the data, what comes out of it and how that's used. So it's definitely a way. And also on the software for those leaders, it's not just about having the conversations, it's about what happens as a result. So if I've got 7 people reporting into me, I can go in and in one place I can see where all 7 of those people, how they're doing, where they are on their particular journeys. But I can also see, as a team, how do I compare, how does my team look? What's my ENPS score for my team? What's my happiness score? How is my team doing as far as well-being? And I might know that in my head because I might be having the conversations every day. But sometimes it can be a bit different, and it just, gives a bit of reassurance back. I mean, the places it's most sticky and the places people do it the most is like Rose's Tie, for example. It's part of their KP, sort of part of their balanced scorecard, KPI, whatever you like to call it, sort of their objectives for their managers. And, sometimes it does take more than just saying we're doing this because it's the right thing. And we say we do it because this is what the business expects.
Super. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, I mean, there's so many good reasons that we've kind of unpacked there, really, about why somebody should start thinking about conversations and culture. I wanted to maybe just end by asking you a couple of like quick fire estimates, which I thought would be quite interesting.
Oh my gosh. Put me on the
And this is
spot.
just whatever sort of comes to mind. There's only a couple of
Okay.
questions I thought would be quite interesting. So I was thinking sort of out of 10 or as a percentage, let's say as a percentage, how many businesses do you think just do appraisals of any type? What percentage would you
Um,
estimate?
do you know what? I don't know. I really don't know. I know only a third of the people that do think they're good.
Okay, that's interesting.
How many people actually do them? I think that I think there's a lot of but I think people will say they do them. I think it's about effectiveness. So I think it's probably quite a high percentage of people that say, so let's say 75% of organisations do them, but only a third of those will be effective.
Well, that leads on to my second question, which was what percentage of people actually use the information they get from an appraisal to do anything? So
Oh,
I think that my guess would be most people would do an appraisal and then just shelve it,
yeah,
not actually do anything with it.
yeah. I mean, I'd say nearly none. I'd put it in the 10%, if that,
Yeah.
of someone that's doing it effectively. And actually, I'm working with, I think maybe I mentioned this before, but I bang on a lot about a business that has nothing to do with me, but Pineapple, who are at the moment working with organisations to collect their data. And their data is very much labour turnover and, cost per hire and, quite what I would call hard information. And actually what I'm doing with both, with the Ned and Rose's Tie are looking at the outputs of that and correlating it against the outputs of what happens in Carrero. Because isn't it interesting that if we've never been able to say before, with 100% hand on heart, that actually if you do X, Y will happen. If your people are marking themselves happier and living your behaviours, you will get less labour turnover. So if we can track that over time, then it'll either prove that this is the best bit of kit out there or actually doesn't work at all. Either way, it's going to show us something. Yeah. I mean, I suppose the most shocking statistic that I find is that nearly 70% of people think that their manager is good at assessing their performance. And there's a whole big thing to be said about how do you measure performance, and should it be that subjective that a manager gets to decide? And no, it shouldn't. And the way that tech is going, there's more and more stuff that's going to come in to impact how you look at someone's performance. But sitting down and having a conversation with someone and showing them that you care about them and their career and their performance, I don't think we can take that away. I don't think we can, our technology, I'd say, is one of the only bits of technology that's going out there and saying, this will make your managers have to spend more time on something. We want you to use this to sit down and step away from the day-to-day and take time to do something. We're not trying to speed up a process. We're not trying to make you do that. And do you know what? You're busy. But if you do this and you do this properly, then you won't be having to think about recruiting new people, getting new team members and not understanding what's going on and putting people on courses that they don't need to go on because they've got no interest. And it will help you engage your people. I know that.
What a fantastic way to finish. I love that. Thank you for spending that time with us and kind of explaining what the problem is before we move on to in the solution in later episodes. I think that was really interesting because I think because we are all in the weeds, we just fail to see these problems sometimes. So I think that was brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Joe. See you soon.
Thank you very much. Bye.